Well, hello and welcome back to another week on the allotment on this very damp, drizzly, humid August morning. Been away for a while, haven't been anywhere, but well, went down to the New Forest to see my parents last weekend, and we've had my son and our grandchildren here this weekend, and it's Sunday morning and they've gone, so I got up extra special early. Because I haven't been on the plot for an extended period for quite a while. So yeah, I've got all day up here. If you've not been to my channel before, where have you been? But a very warm welcome. And to all those who've been here before, the same welcome. So what's going on? Well, it's really all about cropping. I don't think I've ever taken as much produce to the farm shop as I have this year, simply because we have so much and our freezers are all but full, and as we take something out we put something in, and yeah, it's going very well, particularly at the moment. Runner beans and French beans, the onions are all flopping over, and I was keeping them down this path on some baker's baskets, but the weather's just too wet, and you know, they'll rot. So I'm in the process now of shifting them all home, and we've got the greenhouse and a carport where we can keep them dry, and hopefully they'll dry off, ready to store through the winter. So the onions have been a fantastic success this year. I have found a couple with a little bit of rot around the root, but it's only a couple. And so hopefully most of them will store successfully. So what am I doing today on the plot? Well, I think the main thing today is to save some pea seeds, pea alderman, which went over a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago. We've had a fantastic crop, and they're all in the freezer if we haven't eaten them fresh. So I'd like to try and save my own seed, because, you know, that's free seed, isn't it? So yeah, I've got that to do today, and then to slowly start to dismantle the dead plants, and then at some point, maybe not today, but at some point, to take those frames down, ready to move to a different bed for next year. So that's quite a big job. Also, the bit of ground I've got down the bottom that I'm hoping to get off Melvin, I've put some black plastic down, and I'm trying to suppress the weeds, so that if I get that bit of ground in the future, I've already made a start on it. And on that piece of ground is an old blackcurrant bush that doesn't produce. The berries are tiny, and I've given it for 3 or 4 years now, and I cut some old wood out of it to try and rejuvenate it, and it didn't work, so that's got to go, and I think I might chop that down today. And the other project I'm working on in slow time is the pond. That, you know, I don't mind it being overgrown in the summer. You know, it's a little haven for the bees and the wildlife and the frogs, hopefully, and a good year with tadpoles. But it does need sorting, and I'm slowly working through that. And the other job is this fence that I'm improving and filling in the gaps, because it's a pallet fence, so it's obviously got gaps, which were fine, but the grass and the nettles, more importantly, grow through it, and it doesn't quite, you know, please my eye. So that's being improved, and I'm doing quite well on that, and I'll show you that later. Couple of little stories for you. I've got a bit of a family heirloom in my pocket, a bit of history that is a wonderful piece of social history, and a couple of other bits and pieces. So welcome along, good to have you here. So a little bit of a look at what's been good this year, and I'll start here with the beetroot. That's been very successful. It always has been. I don't want to tempt fate, but Boltardy, it's the only one I grow. I did try that Dichogia last year and I didn't like it. So yeah, this has been very good. The bed looks a bit untidy, there's a few weeds in it, but you know, I'm not worried about that. When I dig it all out, I'll clear the bed. Another thing that's been successful this year is the spring onions. I've really got the hang of those. I had a bit of trouble trying to grow those when I first started with my allotment, but the multi-sown cell trays have been successful, and you can see here, actually these are getting a bit big. That's the only problem I've had with the spring onions this year, is how to use them, which is a nice problem to have. The calabrese or broccoli and the cauliflower, the broccoli was good, my first sowing. The cauliflower not so good. I think I got 2 out of the 8 that I grew. And this is a second sowing, and we shall see. I don't know. But after some initial worries about my squashes, the pumpkins are really going at a pace. And they're, you know, I every now and again I have a quick look under the leaves, and there's plenty of pumpkins in there. Some of them have managed to creep out of the bed, and I've put old tiles underneath them to try and keep them off the damp ground. Another thing that's been fantastic is this runner beans, St. George. I've eaten runner beans all my life. My mum and dad always grew them. They still grow them now, and I like them. But sometimes some of the ones I've grown have been just a little bit stringy and a bit fibrous. But this St. George, I mean, I have to say that one of the things I've done this year is got a handle on picking them small, and but I have to say they are the nicest runner bean I've ever tasted. So yeah, runner bean St. George, very good. Moving around, here's another crop that's been fantastic. The dwarf French beans, really good crop this year. I had 2 separate sowings. One has gone over now and has been removed, and this bed is cropping now, and it's one of the things that I'm freezing a lot of and taking to the farm shop, because you don't get blemishes on these. They grow quite clean, and you know, people will probably buy those. So yeah, the dwarf French bean has been very good. I haven't got it here, of course, because it's all stored at home, but the garlic was very successful this year, as have been the onions. And this is a very weedy, untidy bed. But again, you can't hoe between these onions when they start to drop and flop. And I'm trying not to worry about it. I think, again, these might come out today. Maybe not the red ones at the end. They haven't dropped quite as readily. But yeah, the onions have been very good this year. We've had a bumper crop. This is the butternut mashed potato, and I have shown you these before, but I'm really looking forward to trying these. There's one of the fruits there. They do look a little bit different to your normal butternuts, and I shall be really interested to see, in fact there's more through there, if they actually do taste like mashed potato. I find it hard to believe, but I'm prepared to give it a try. So yeah, these are looking good. Now to the not so good. These are tomato moneymaker, and I thought they were blight resistant. That's the reason I grew them, but it would appear not. I mean, you know, August is always a wet month where we are, and it's very humid, damp, and you know, it's your classic blight, late blight conditions. And I've noticed that these plants are starting to get what looks to me like blight, and there, clearly, if that is blight, and I'm sure it is, they are not blight resistant. And I've invested a lot of time and effort in growing these as cordons, a lot of side shooting, tying in, restaking. You can see they're all upright. In fact, look, there's another one. I mean, you know, if you don't want to suffer disappointment, don't have an allotment. But I will be gutted if I lose all of these. Not a lot I can do. Clearly this, you know, moneymaker is not blight resistant, so I've learned that. So trying to keep a positive spin on it. I know from Muddy Boots allotment channel that he grows Crimson Crush, And I've done a little bit of very brief online research, and it would appear that Crimson Crush, if you get blight, which we clearly do, is the tomato to grow. So you can see more of it there, and it is definitely working its way into the fruit. And look at that stem there. So anyway, yeah, I've got blight and it is affecting the tomatoes, and it looks like I'm going to lose them. However, on a more positive note, the greenhouse, Gardener's Delight, I've got, I think, 8 plants in there, and they have cropped beautifully. They're good, they're tasty, they're prolific, abundant, and Cheryl's making sauces and freezing them, and we're using them in our salads. So all is not lost on the tomato front, but I'm just so sad that I put so much effort into these, thinking they were blight resistant and that I'd be safe, and there you go. Still important to learn from your cock-ups. And well, on the subject of disappointments, the leeks, yeah, I've mentioned before, but this bed was full of leeks, and as they've bolted, I've removed them, and I'm down to 2 left, and I don't hold out much hope for these. But there you go. This little group on the end were a second later sowing, and I had them left over, and there wasn't much ground, so I've put them in very close together. But they, apart from the one on the left there, which looks a bit rogue, so far so good with that later sowing. Well, this looks like a war zone, but actually the pea aldermen were fantastic. They were tasty. Again, lots and lots of it. Lots of the bags full in the freezers. So yeah, really successful. And I've deliberately left these to dry off. And I shall take, I shall take some of these, put them in a paper bag, and store them over the winter. And try and grow my own seed next year. So this is a big project, and it's something I shall start on today. Well, let's try and keep it upbeat. All is not bad news. These are the tubs that I'm growing my parsnips in, and every now and again I come and have a look, and I scrape away, and yeah, I mean, there's some big old parsnips in there. I mean, being August, we're not really ready to start eating them yet. And of course the accepted wisdom is that you want to get them under a bit of a frost to sweeten them up. So we shall see. But, I've no idea how long they are, but they certainly look as if they've got some girth to them. So I'm hopeful. So the parsnips are looking good. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tubs. All these were pre-chitted in the airing cupboard, and then when they showed signs of life, they went in a circular pattern, which was very evident, if you remember, back in the spring, but now it's just a mass of growth. So I'm optimistic for these. And this is all the bare ground where my onions came out, and I think you can probably see over there is the plastic sheeting that I've put down on a piece of ground that at the moment is not rented out. It's just been left. I don't think the owner's aware there's a bit of spare ground there that somebody could be using, although I have actually passed the message on to tell him. Anyway, that's covered over in case I do eventually end up with it, and it will extend along from the plastic sheeting all the way along, and this bit here at the moment belongs to Melvin, and it's the bit he said, I can't deal with it, would you like to take it, Martin? And of course I've bit his hand off. So it extends along, comes back down here. So actually this piece that I've always called the extra bit will be quite a significant piece of ground. A rather unglamorous crop that I don't think gets enough credit is this perpetual spinach. I grew 1 seed tray of seedlings, popped them in this raised bed, and apart from a little bit of watering in that hot dry spell we had, I've done nothing with it other than take it home, blend it up in the NutriBullet, and then pour it into a ice cube tray, and we're freezing ice cubes of spinach for our smoothies in the winter months. And of course we've been eating it in Cheryl does tomato sauces and she puts a bit of spinach in that. So it's been a really good crop, an absolute stalwart, and I shall grow this again every year. And there's my little kiwi plant, and the plan is that that grows up and along this rather simple frame that I've grown. We shall see, you know. I can't remember how much it cost, about 18 quid I think. So, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained, and we shall see how it goes. So, an update on the fence. As I said before, I wanted to fill it in, and of course once you do that it binds all the individual pallets together. It stops the nettles and the weeds and the grass growing in through and looking unsightly, keeps that all retained behind my fence, and I've done fairly well. I thought this would be a long-term project, as is typical with me. I tend to go at things a bit, some might say like a bull in a china shop, but I would say with enthusiasm and drive. Anyway, I'm down to where that little bench is by that green tub, and another 1 or 2 pallets split down into individual bits should do it, I think. I'm very pleased, it's looking good, and I quite like the rustic effect of all the different coloured and different types of wood from different pallets. Yeah, I'm really pleased with that. I think that's a real success, and it's given me the opportunity to just to clear out the ditch as well, so the ditch is all ready for the winter, clear, ready to run and keep the water off my plot. Yeah, very happy with that. And just sweeping round as I look, all these nasturtiums and the calendulas and the marigolds are quite a picture. I've been up here, I did get up here ridiculously early, even for me this morning. It was silly. It doesn't get light now till about 6 o'clock, so yeah, we're definitely moving in towards autumn, but so, you know, so be it. Anyway, it is light now, thankfully, and I did say I'd tell you a little story. Now, I think I've already mentioned this, because this was in my dad's life story, but when I went down to see my mum and dad at the weekend, or when Cheryl and we went down to see them, I asked if I could borrow this rather unglamorous looking piece of metal. But if I can change your opinion of that lump of metal if I say that that is shrapnel. And the story goes that I come from Kent, the Medway towns, and long before I was born in the war, obviously the Medway towns were on the route for the German bombers and fighters going towards London. And so in Gillingham and the surrounding areas, and Rainham where my mum was born, they took a bit of a pounding, because either the bombers, you know, didn't know where they were and they dropped their bombs early, or they were scared and they released their cargo and made their way back before they got to the anti-aircraft flak that they would get at London, or they were on their way back and they just wanted to drop off what they hadn't dropped on London. Anyway, for whatever reason, you know, Gillingham took a bit of a pounding, and my dad was only very, very young. He was he was a toddler really, and his dad, my granddad, was away in the war, and so he was at home with his little sister, who was 2 or 3 years old, and his mum, and they lived in a little terraced house down in Gillingham near the River Medway, and so every night the air raid warnings would go off, and my nan was hard of hearing, or deaf, partially deaf, so she wouldn't hear it. So my dad would tell her that the sirens had gone off, and they had a routine whereby they would bang on next door or the wall with a hairbrush to say, you know, that was the signal to say we're coming round, and they go out the front door, around to next door, and spend the evening next door for a bit of company and comfort for what must have been a frightening nightly experience. And my dad would take his little bag of toys and they'd spend the evening round there. Anyway, so they got into a routine with that, and then one night as they went to go out, my dad just pulled his mum back, and she was none too happy about it, but anyway they went back round to the next door as normal. In the morning when they came back and it was light, there was a small hole in the pavement or the path up to the front door. And after the war, when my granddad came home, he dug it out, and that is what was drilled into the garden path. And what had happened essentially was that my dad heard, you know, the whizzing or the shrill of incoming shrapnel, and just pulled his mum back sufficient effectively to save her life, I'm sure. And that's what they dug out. I mean, that would kill you instantly. You wouldn't even know you'd been hit. You know, it's a fascinating little story, and it's a little piece of Jordan social history. And my youngest son Daniel has already said to his grandparents, "When you go, can I have that?" So I shan't be getting it, but it's a very treasured, like I say, a piece of family history and a wonderful story from a time when, you know, people were different to what goes on nowadays. God knows how today's society would cope with the Blitz. God only knows. But yeah, I hope you find that slightly interesting. Well, that's a good job ticked off the list. And I've realised while I'm doing it that I can't take the frames down because those massive sunflower, Russian giant they are, yeah, they're tied to the frame because they were falling over. So for now the frame can stay where it is, but that's a good job done. Well, the old Union flag is really giving it what for in this wind. It's picking up quite a storm. And there's some hell of a black clouds coming over, so I better be prepared to get wet today. But anyway, before I have another brew and my nettle tea, Len, I thought I'd read a little bit out of this How Not to Die book. It's not a glamorous vegetable, beetroot, and it does get some bad press. It's actually one of my favourites. I love beetroot, and after having read this paragraph or two, I'm really quite pleased that I love beetroot, and I'm going to try and sell beetroot to you now. So if you'll excuse me, it won't take more than a couple of minutes. I'd like to read this little extract about nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a key biological messenger within the body, and its message is open sesame. When released by your endothelium, and they are the cells lining your arteries, it signals the muscle fibres within the walls of your arteries to relax, allowing them to open up and for more blood to flow. That's how nitroglycerin pills work. The nitroglycerin people take when they're experiencing chest pain is converted into nitric oxide, which dilates the coronary arteries, allowing more blood to flow to the heart muscle. Erectile dysfunction pills like Viagra work in the same way. They boost nitric oxide signalling, which relaxes penile arteries. Have you ever heard the phrase penile arteries on an allotment video before? I bet you haven't. And improves blood flow to the penis. The erectile dysfunction you really need to concentrate or be concerned about, though, is endothelial dysfunction. No, I'll do that again. The ED you really need to be concerned about, though, is endothelial dysfunction, the failure of the linings of your arteries to produce enough nitric oxide to properly dilate them. Nitric oxide is produced by an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase. Its enemy is free radicals, which not only gobble up nitric oxide, but can hijack nitric oxide synthase and force it to start pumping out additional free radicals. Free radicals are bad news in the body. They cause, they are linked to cancer and other diseases. So what you're trying to do is to produce antioxidants which eliminate free radicals. Without enough nitric oxide, your arteries can then stiffen, become dysfunctional and raise your blood pressure and your risk of heart attack. So you need to flood your body with antioxidant-rich plant foods throughout the day to extinguish the free radicals and let nitric oxide synthase get back to its job of keeping your arteries fully functional. There's an ultrasound device researchers use to measure the nitric oxide induced dilation of your arteries. One study using this device found that if you take people following the standard Western diet, the diet that most of us eat, and have them eat fewer antioxidants, their artery dilation only gets a little bit worse. It seems we're already near the bottom of the barrel arterial function wise. So there's not much room for further decline. But put people on a high antioxidant diet by, among many other things, switching their bananas for berries and their white chocolate for dark, and within just 2 weeks they experience a significant boost in their arteries' ability to relax and dilate normally. In addition to eating antioxidant-rich foods that can boost your body's ability to produce nitric oxide, that are rich in to produce nitric oxide, you can also eat certain vegetables such as beetroot and greens that are rich in natural nitrates, which your body can convert into nitric oxide. This process explains why researchers have been able to show a 10-point systolic blood pressure drop in volunteers within hours of their consuming beetroot juice, an effect that lasted throughout the day. That study was performed on a group of healthy subjects, though. Obviously, we need to test the power of beetroot juice where it counts most, in people with high blood pressure. If nitrate-rich vegetables can so powerfully modulate humanity's leading risk factor for dying, why did it take until 2015 before such a study was published? Well, who was going to fund it? Big beetroot? Drug companies rake in more than 10 billion a year from blood pressure medications. You can't make billions on beetroot, not if I'm growing it up here for free. That's why we are fortunate to have charities like the British Heart Foundation, which finally funded a beetroot juice study involving people with high blood pressure. Half the subjects were provided with 250 millilitres of beetroot juice daily for 4 weeks, while the other half were given an indistinguishable nitrate-free placebo drink. The researchers found that not only was systolic blood pressure reduced by about 8 points in the beetroot juice drinkers, but the benefits grew week by week, suggesting their blood pressure might have continued to improve even further. The scientists concluded that nitrate-rich vegetables may prove to be both cost-effective, affordable and favourable for a public health approach to hypertension. Now, alright, that's a very long-winded way of saying beetroot juice is very good for your heart and your blood pressure. In fact, I have seen research that shows that top-rated athletes now drink beetroot juice because it dilates and opens up the blood vessels, which allows the blood to flow more freely, thus getting more oxygen to your muscles and improving performance. And that's the power of vegetables. The more vegetables you eat in their most natural form, the healthier it is. Anyway, I hope you find that slightly interesting, especially if you've got heart disease and high blood pressure. And you know, all this fuss about COVID, heart disease is killing hundreds of people a day, every day, before the pandemic and long after it. And we don't seem to do much about it. I don't understand. So, beetroot juice. Well, just to show you that when I come up here all day, I always at some point in the day have my nettle tea. And you know, I've got to be honest with you, it's nothing great taste wise, but when I read just how powerful and healthy it is for you, I was really shocked and inspired. So that's been steeping in there for, you know, the dry nettle leaves for about 10 or 15 minutes while I've been clearing that bed. Actually, I'm getting quite used to the smell of it, maybe not the taste. But yeah, very good. Cheers, Len. It's very nondescript, so it's not unpleasant. It's not pleasant, but it's not unpleasant, and it's perfectly drinkable. So you're very good health. Well, that took seconds. I might have a change of heart. I've left 3 or 4 new shoots on, and I might just see that if that radical chop doesn't do something next year, it can sort of rejuvenate it almost into a new plant. Because it's one hell of a root ball there. It'll take some digging out, which is no problem, but I'll think about it and see what I feel. But yeah, I'm now going to go and put that lot on the bonfire. Well, from red herrings and white elephants, we're due a bit of culture. How about a bit of Shakespeare? At one fell swoop is used to indicate in a single movement or all at the same time, and conjures up an image of a bird of prey swooping down on its target. It is one of Shakespeare's creations. In the Bard's 1606 play Macbeth, the character Macduff, on learning his wife and children have all been killed, cries out, shall I have a go at it? Yeah. What? All my pretty chickens and their dam at one fell swoop? The word that was awful, wasn't it? The word fell has been used since then to mean evil or deadly, and I didn't know that. I won't do that again, I promise. I'd like to make an observation regarding kale. I don't know how well it will show up, but this kale has been growing in my greenhouse at home, and it was absolutely ravaged by the cabbage white. I was picking caterpillars off every day, and I had to have the greenhouse door open because of the heat. And in the end, you know, the plant just doesn't get a chance to grow any leaves, because the moment there is a solid leaf on it, there's caterpillars on it. So I've moved it up here and I've put it under this netting, and of course netting's not foolproof. You know, the cabbage white finds a way in eventually. But what I'm saying is, I just simply, the plant simply cannot get an opportunity to grow because it's defoliated the moment anything new comes on it. So you know, it's almost just not worth it. I have cosseted this stuff. It's been in the greenhouse at home. I kept the door. In fact, I can see more. I've just spotted more. I've had the netting off now because I spotted caterpillars on it, and I can see I've missed some. You know, it's really disheartening. However, just 50 yards away on Terry's plot is this purple kale. Now this has been out, no netting, and just left all summer. And look at it, not a butterfly, not a caterpillar, not a single hole. Well, there are a couple of little minor holes, but nothing of any consequence. It's got to be the colour. I mean, I know from my research that the more colourful a vegetable, the more antioxidants in it. So there must be some compound or chemical in this kale that the cabbage white caterpillars don't like. So next year it's purple kale for me and no green kale. So lesson learned. Well, as I'm digging up these onions, I am finding some that are rotten, and the roots have rotted off. They look pretty disgusting. So I won't put these on the compost heap. I'll take these home and put them in the normal rubbish, or I'll put them on the bonfire. There's not many of them, but it's just enough to, well, yeah. It is what it is. You can't do anything about it. I don't know why one gets it and one doesn't. Maybe you can tell me. But yeah, still a good crop. And here's how you tell the difference. I mean, I haven't dug them up yet, but I can tell you that the one on the left is going to have rot, and the one on the right is a healthy onion. Yeah, see? Roots are gone and it's rotting away. Another job ticked off the list. Time for a brew. Well, done a bit of picking. The one on the left is going down the farm shop, and the one on the right is going back to our kitchen. Wow, there's an awful lot, about 3 full overflowing barrow loads come out of that area, and that's a lot tidier. Well, it's mid-afternoon. I'm going to call it a day. I've had a good session. Managed to achieve just about everything I set out to. And this afternoon I've even managed to import a bit more of the chip-ins, and slowly but surely I'm redoing all the paths. Some of them I can't get to because the butternuts and the pumpkins have sprawled across them, but you know, that'll wait till the autumn and winter. And yeah, the plot's in good order. So lots of harvest, lots of crop. Got to go home now and sort out all the runner beans and the French beans and the beetroot. So it doesn't finish when I leave the plot, but still loving it. I hope you enjoyed that, and I shall be back next weekend, I guess. So look after yourselves, whatever you're doing, and I shall see you then. Take care. Bye for now.